Hi, I'm Lena. 3 days ago, I ran a paternity test for my own husband. And he didn't even flinch when he sent her to me. She walked into my clinic with soft eyes, a baby bump, and a shaky voice. Said her boyfriend told her this place was discreet. Said she needed to know. So I handed her a clipboard, asked for the name of the alleged father. She wrote as Keith Reynolds, age 44, dies or is us. That's my husband. I didn't say a word. I didn't even raise an eyebrow. I just did my job. Collected her sample. Collected the baby's. And his. Then I ran it. Twice. Oversener 99.98% match. Boxaws, and that number still echoes in my head, like a slap that never stops stinging. He gave her what he told me I didn't deserve. A child. What do you think happened after I slid that envelope across the desk? Before we go further, can you tell me? What time is it for you right now? Where are you listening from? Drop a comment. I read everyone. The next day, I scheduled her follow-up during my shift. When she walked in, she smiled like it was nothing. Like this wasn't the ending of my entire marriage. He's the father, she said. Almost proud. I looked her dead in the eye, didn't blink. I'm still his wife. She froze. Then he walked in, holding a smoothie, joking with someone on the phone. Until he saw me. White coat, envelope in hand, face calm, his face. Not so much. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't ask why. I just handed him two things, the paternity result and the divorce papers. You can sign and walk away, I said. Or I can forward this to your veterans board. He opened his mouth. I raised a hand. They care about honor, Keith. You remember what that is, don't you? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because silence, when chosen, is louder than betrayal, and justice, when quiet, Keith stings deeper than revenge. Keith used to make coffee for both of us. Now it's just for him. I hear the machine hiss in the kitchen every morning at 60:45. He pours his into a black travel mug. Leaves the pot half full. Doesn't ask if I'm awake. He stopped asking about a year ago. Somewhere along the way we went quiet. Not angry, just quiet. He leaves for the gym by 700. Clients at 70:30. He says the mornings give him clarity. I used to think he meant the sunrise. Now I think he meant silence. We've been married 18 years. We used to laugh in cheap hotel rooms. Share fries. Dream about road trips we never took. Now we pass each other in the hallway, like coworkers in a building that's shutting down. The guest bedroom light stays on lately. He says it's for his back. That the couch was too soft. I don't ask questions anymore. Not because I'm okay, but because I've asked them all before, and the answers were always, not yet. Seth, let's wait. Give me time. Time. That word used to mean something. I wanted a child, a home full of noise. Keith said we weren't ready. That was year 4. Then year 7. Then 10. By year 12, I stopped leaving parenting books on his nightstand. By year 15, I stopped buying birthday cards for the child I'd never meet. Keith always promised we'd revisit the conversation. But he never said when. One afternoon last spring, I found him folding his gym shirts while humming. I stood in the doorway. Said, "Do you think we missed our window?" He looked up, then looked away. Said, "Maybe we were never supposed to have one." And that was it. That was all he said. I sat on our bed that night and stared at the picture frame on my dresser. Our wedding photo. Us on the beach, wind in my hair. Keith smiling at something behind me. I realized. Even then, he wasn't really looking at me. The next morning, the frame was gone. I didn't ask where he put it. The lab smells like alcohol swabs and printer ink. Always has. It's quiet. Predictable. No one raises their voice here. Not even the machines. Some days, I think this place knows me better than anyone. I've worked here 8 years. Run over 4,000 samples. Babies, husbands, stepchildren, custody disputes. I test for truth. But I stopped expecting it a long time ago. My coworkers trust me. They say I'm steady, efficient, reliable. But no one asks if I'm happy. Not really. No one sees the ring I stopped wearing 6 months ago, or if they do, they don't ask. I get in at 1800 sharp. Tie my hair back. Lab coat on. Smile just enough to not invite questions. Most days I make it until 5 without breaking. But last Thursday around 4:47, someone left a baby sock on the check-in counter. Just one. Tiny, yellow. I stared at it for a full minute before slipping it into my drawer. I don't know why. Maybe because it reminded me of something I stopped letting myself want. That night, I stayed late. Said I had reports to finish. I didn't. I just needed the lights, the hum, the clean surfaces. I opened the bottom drawer in my office. Pulled out a shoebox I hadn't touched in 3 years. Inside, photos, old cards, a printout of a baby registry that never got used, and our wedding album. I held it like it might break. Fingers brushing the cover. The girl in those photos. She thought waiting meant love. She thought patience could fix anything. But love withholds nothing. And patience isn't silence. I looked at one picture for a long time. We were dancing. Keith's hand on my back. My eyes closed. Smiling. I used to think that was peace. Now I know. I just didn't see the truth because I didn't want to. I closed the album. Put the box back. Turned off the light. The hallway outside the lab felt colder than usual. And I couldn't tell if it was the air, he or me. Dinner's always at 7:15. Keith likes routine. I set the plates. He pours his protein shake. We chew, swallow, scroll. He reads client emails on his phone. I fold the napkins because I need something to do with my hands. Sometimes I ask, "How was your day?" He usually says, "Fine." You or nothing at all. The air between us isn't tense. It's just tired. Like a wall we both pretend not to see. Last night, I said nothing. He didn't notice. I cleared the table in silence. Rinsed dishes. Poured out half his shake. He never finishes it anymore. A few years back, we spent Christmas Eve at his parents' house. The table was full. Ham pie, his mother's terrible green beans. Everyone laughed too loud. I brought dessert. His mom looked at me and said, "You still not pregnant, sweetheart?" Like she was asking about the weather. Then she laughed. Added, "Maybe it's just not in your stars." Keith didn't say a word. Not one. He kept cutting his ham like her words weren't cutting through me. I laughed, too. That light, shaky laugh you use when you're trying not to cry. I excused myself after dessert. Said I wasn't feeling well. He stayed behind. We never spoke about it. I haven't been back since. Lately, I notice no one says my name at the dinner table. Even Keith. He talks to me without using it. Pass the salt. Ooh, did you see my charger? Never, Lena. As if saying it would acknowledge I still exist in this house. Tonight, he finished early, didn't touch his veggies. Stood up, stretched, and grabbed his gym bag. Heading back for the late session. He mumbled, already walking toward the door. He drank the rest of his shake at the counter. Didn't look at me once. I watched the back of his head. Wondered if that's all I was meant to do now. Watch things walk away. The doubt didn't hit all at once. It started like a flicker. A feeling in the chest that something isn't quite right. It was a Monday. Slow afternoon, rain outside. Most staff were gone early. I stayed behind, told the front desk I was cleaning up old logs. What I was really doing was typing in my husband's name. Ask Keith Reynolds, Asa search. 3 entries appeared. I blinked, once. Twice. The most recent entry, sample collected. Alleged father, date 3 weeks ago. Time in 1:43 p.m. Tech Marisol. That was a Friday. I had taken the day off for my annual checkup. He knew that. He saw it on the calendar. I clicked into the record. Patient Haley Bennett. Age 26. Pregnant. Referral unknown. But I knew that name. Vaguely. I remembered someone by that name coming in recently. Quiet, polite, small frame. It wasn't just coincidence. It couldn't be. I scrolled down. No email listed. No insurance. Self-pay. Some people don't want a paper trail. Especially when they're hiding something. I stared at the screen. My fingers resting lightly on the mouse. My whole body suddenly cold. He came to my workplace. He sat in my waiting room. Signed consent forms with my last name still legally attached to his. I leaned back. Let the chair creak beneath me. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air felt thinner. I didn't cry. Didn't gasp. Didn't move. I just clicked, print. The report came out slow. Each line a nail and something I didn't want to name yet. I folded the papers into a blank envelope. Slid it into my bag. Locked the drawer. The door behind me squeaked open. Marisol peeked in. Still here, she smiled. I nodded. Just finishing a few things. She didn't notice my hands, or how I clenched them in my lap to keep them from shaking. She left. Lights clicked off one by one in the hallway. I stayed, staring at the computer screen, blank now. But the truth, still burning through me like static under skin. She came back the following week. Different outfit. Same nervous smile. Her hair was tucked into a messy bun. Loose gray hoodie. Soft pink nails. She looked young. Younger than I remembered. Or maybe I was just looking harder this time. The front desk buzzed. Said she was here for a secondary sample. I glanced at the schedule. Marisol was off. Guess who was on shift? I walked out to the waiting area, clipboard in hand. Professional face on. She stood up quickly, pulled her sleeves down. Hi, she said, voice light. Sorry again, I forgot the paperwork. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. We walked side by side down the hall. She didn't know who I was. Or maybe she did, but if she did, she was a better actress than I'd ever be. In the collection room, she sat across from me. Answered each question. Signed the forms. She giggled once. Said, "This baby's already causing drama." I smiled. Or something like it. I handed her a sterile swab. Watched as she followed instructions. Her hand trembled slightly. Not from fear. From something else. Excitement. Hope. I didn't ask. Wasn't my job to ask. I logged the sample. Sealed it tight. Marked it with a code. She thanked me. Stood. Turned to leave. Then paused at the door. I heard you guys are really accurate, she said. I met her eyes. Steady. We are. She nodded. Off she went. Down the hall. Out the glass doors. Into the sunlight like it was just another Tuesday. I stood alone in that room for a long time. The chair she sat in still warm. I looked at the sample box. The label. The handwriting. Then at my own hands. Still gloved. Still steady. Truth has a strange weight to it. Not heavy, just cold. I walked back to my station. Opened the drawer. Took out the envelope I'd printed days ago. Still sealed. Still quiet. I placed my hand on top of it. Not to open it. Not to reread it. Just to remember that I already knew. And knowing was enough. I walked home that night. Left the car in the parking lot. Needed air. Needed the quiet of shoes against pavement, and wind brushing past my ears. The streetlights flickered. Early spring chill, too cold for just a sweater. But I didn't go back for my coat. Fairfax was quiet after 8 p.m. Shops closed, families finishing dinner. Windows glowed with other people's lives. I passed a toy store. Pink bicycles in the window, stuffed animals lined up on a shelf like they were waiting to be chosen. I paused. Just for a second. Then kept walking. He always said, not yet. The first time I brought it up, we were sitting on the floor eating pizza from the box. He kissed my shoulder. Said, let's wait a little. Let me get settled with civilian life. I said okay. Because love waits, or so I thought. Year 4, he said, maybe after the promotion. Year 7. We should buy the house first. Year 9. My back's still not great. Year 12. It's just not the right time. There was always a reason, a good one, a rational one, and I believed every single one because I wanted to. But deep down, I think I knew, it wasn't timing, it was me, somewhere between that first, not yet, and this walk home, something in me gave up. Quietly. Like a candle that burns down to the wick without a sound, I let go without realizing I had. We never argued. We just disappeared while standing in the same room. By the time I reached our block, my hands were numb, my face stiff from wind and whatever emotion had frozen there. Keith's car was gone. Evening client maybe. Or nowhere at all. I climbed the porch steps, key in lock, silence inside. The kind that used to comfort me. Now it felt like confirmation. I dropped my bag at the door. Turned off the porch light. Stood in the hallway just long enough to say it out loud. Not loud. Just enough for the truth to echo back, without denial. He was never going to choose me. He got home at 9:12. I was sitting at the kitchen table. No lights. Just the dim glow from the microwave clock. He tossed his gym bag by the door. Didn't see me at first. When he did, he froze. "Hey," he said slowly. "You scared me." I didn't respond. Just watched him as he reached for the fridge. Water bottle. Protein shake. Avoidance. "How long?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It just landed. Flat. Heavy. He turned slowly. Confused, then guarded. "What do you mean?" I tilted my head. Let the silence thicken. "How long have you been seeing her?" I asked again. "Calm. Clear," he sighed. Rubbed the back of his neck. Classic stall. "It's not like that." "It is exactly like that," I said. He leaned against the counter. Didn't look me in the eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he mumbled. "It was just. We got clothes at the gym. And what?" I cut in. "Forgot you were married." He didn't answer. Didn't need to. I already knew. "I saw the check-in logs," I said. "3 weeks ago. You came to my clinic. On my day off." He blinked. The color drained from his face. "I didn't think you'd see it." "I did," I said. And I remembered her face. From the waiting room. From the way she smiled like you promised her the world. Still no answer. So I kept going. "You started sleeping in the guest room a month after she got pregnant. You stopped asking me to pick up protein powder because she started doing it. You deleted texts, changed your lock screen, bought new socks but didn't wear cologne anymore." Keith looked up. Finally, eyes tired, mouth tight. "You were always busy," he said. Quiet, pathetic. "And you were always somewhere else," I replied. "Even when you were home. The thing about betrayal is, you feel it long before you prove it. But once you do, you never unsee it." And once I said it out loud, the weight shifted. It didn't break me. It just clarified what had been true for a very long time. There was a time when he couldn't sleep without me. He'd come home from deployment jumpy, thin, his skin holding on to dust that didn't wash off for weeks. He wouldn't let anyone touch his back. Flinched at door slams. Slept with a knife under the pillow for 6 straight months. I learned how to make the house quiet, how to speak soft, how to press 2 fingers to his wrist when he startled awake at 3 a.m. I kept a notebook. Documented every nightmare. Time, duration, triggers. It made him feel safer. He knowing someone else was keeping track. He didn't want therapy at first. Said it was weakness. I drove him anyway. Waited in the parking lot for 48 sessions before he said, "Thanks." That was year 2. I used to sleep on the edge of the bed so he'd feel less trapped. I learned how to make protein pancakes without eggs because the smell reminded him of the mess halls. I held his hand the first time he heard fireworks again. He cried, hard, then said, "Sorry." I said, "Don't be," and meant it. When he started training clients, I celebrated every milestone. The first full week without panic. The first morning he made coffee and drank it with both feet on the floor. I cheered for him. Posted it on Facebook. Proud wife. Healing husband. Love wins. People called us resilient. They didn't see the hallway lights I kept on every night. The pills I refilled. The appointments I scheduled under both our names, because he'd forget his own. They didn't see the nights he didn't say thank you. Didn't say anything. The first time I asked for help, he said, "You're strong, Lena. You've got this." I smiled. Because what else was I supposed to do? 18 years. I stayed. Cooked. Folded. Held. Carried. But when it was his turn to hold something for me, a dream, a promise, even just a hand, he chose to give it to someone else. And the worst part, I'm not even sure he sees it as betrayal. I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers. Not my sister in Montana. Not even Marisol, who usually senses everything before I do. Some truths don't want witnesses. They just want silence. And I gave it. Keith didn't bring it up again. Not the night after. Not the week after. He still came home late. Still tossed his gym bag by the door. Still poured one glass of water and drank it without looking at me. We didn't fight. We didn't sleep together either. Didn't share meals. Didn't ask about each other's day. We became shadows walking the same hallways. Familiar, but not present. I made dinner that week. Out of habit, mostly. 2 plates. One got cold. He didn't come down. I washed the dishes without turning on music, without humming. Just water, and the clink of silverware against porcelain. The coffee maker dripped the next morning. Same time. Same sound. I used to make his cup. Light roast. Splash of almond milk. Now, I just let it run. He took his mug. Didn't thank me. Didn't sip it until he was halfway out the door. That's when I realized we hadn't said each other's names in over a month. He called me. A. I said nothing at all. That night, I took a bath, longer than usual. Lit the last lavender candle from our 10-year anniversary trip. It had dust on the lid. Still smelled like that cabin in Tennessee. The one with the broken fireplace and the squeaky bed we didn't complain about. I sat in the water until my fingers pruned. Then I stepped out, wrapped myself in a towel, and caught my reflection in the foggy mirror. Something was missing. Not obvious. Just off. I raised my left hand, looked at the faint ring of paler skin, where gold used to sit. I hadn't worn my wedding band in weeks. Hadn't even noticed when I stopped. But now, looking at that blank space, I felt it. Not like a wound, but like an erasure. Like I'd been quietly erased from a life I never left. I took the Thursday afternoon shift on purpose, swapped with Marisol. Told her I needed the hours. She didn't ask why. She never did. I made sure the report was sealed. Made sure I'd be the one behind the desk when they came to pick it up. I wore my cleanest lab coat. Pressed it the night before. Didn't wear perfume. Didn't want anything to soften what was coming. The clock ticked past 200. Then 2:07. Then I saw her, through the glass doors. Haley, same pink hoodie, same soft eyes. A little more confident this time. She walked in with a small smile. Checked in. Didn't recognize me at first. Or maybe she did, but hoped she was wrong. Either way, she stayed polite. "Hi, I'm here to pick up the results," she said. I nodded. Typed her name. Reached for the envelope I'd set aside the night before. No words. No explanation. Just handed it to her like it was a bill or a receipt. She looked surprised to see me. Eyes flickering from my face to the name tag. Back again. She held the envelope with both hands. Didn't open it right away. Then she did. One tear down the seal, a pause, a skim of the eyes, a breath, and then, that smile. Soft, relieved. "He's the father," she said, like it was something beautiful. I looked at her. Not with rage, not even pity. Just clarity. "I'm still his wife," I said. The words landed hard. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. She froze, smile gone, color draining fast. Behind her, the door opened. Keith. He stepped in like it was just another errand. Keys jingling. Phone in hand. He looked up, and stopped mid-step. He saw me. White coat. Name tag. Envelope. His mouth opened slightly. Like a man stepping into the wrong room. Or waking into a nightmare. He didn't expect this soon. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. I took a second envelope from the drawer. Placed it on the counter. Right in front of him. One copy for her. One for him. Same truth. Same silence. He reached for it, slowly. Hands not quite steady. I stood up. Pushed the chair back without sound. Then I looked at both of them. Then him with his half-wrinkled shirt, her with her trembling fingers. And said nothing. Because what was left had already been said. "You stay," I said to Keith, as Haley turned to leave. She paused, looked between us, then slipped out the door without another word. I watched her go. Watched Keith watch her leave. Then I walked into the small consultation room, beside the front desk. Didn't wait for him to follow. He did anyway. The room was quiet. No posters. Just a desk, 2 chairs, a box of tissues neither of us would touch. I sat. Placed the sealed copy of the results on the table. Right next to a second envelope, white. Thin. No label. He stayed standing. "You already know what's in there," I said, nodding toward the first envelope. "Let's talk about the second one." He looked down. swallowed hard, didn't speak. Divorce, I said simply. No drama, no lawyers. Clean. He finally sat, across from me, arms crossed. Lena. He began, but I cut in. You can sign quietly, I said, or I can forward the paternity results to the Veterans Honor Board. His eyes widened. That's not necessary. I agree. I leaned forward. It wasn't necessary for you to bring her into my clinic. It wasn't necessary to make me the last person in this story to know what was happening. He looked down again. Hands folded. Jaw tight. I messed up, he mumbled. I almost laughed. Messed up. I repeated, not as a question. Just a reminder of how small men make their damage sound. He didn't respond. Your military benefits, I said, tone even. Her tied to conduct and honor, correct? He didn't nod. Didn't deny. I pushed the divorce envelope forward. Then stood. You have until Monday. After that, I stopped being silent. I waited for a moment. Not because I needed his answer, but because I wanted the weight of my words to settle before I walked out. He didn't follow. Didn't call my name. Didn't even stand. I stepped back into the hallway. Straightened my coat. Closed the door behind me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one left behind. This time, I was the one who walked away. The silence after confrontation is different than the silence before it. Before, it was numb. Predictable. A daily ritual. After, it's sharp, a statement. Something people choose. No one asked how I was doing. Not one message. Not one call. His mother posted a picture of Keith on Facebook the day after our confrontation. Caption: Avas, my son. My hero. Always proud of you. I wasn't tagged. No one was. But the message was clear. Our couple friends, the ones we met through his gym, stopped sending invites. Stopped sharing photos. Unfollowed quietly. Even the ones who used to text me recipes or vent about their husband's socks on the floor just vanished. I didn't blame them. Not really. People don't like when truth messes up their dinner parties. I sat in the living room that Sunday. Sunlight through the blinds, dust dancing in the air, like it had nothing better to do. I held the envelope with the divorce papers. Still unsigned. Still sitting there like a dare. Keith hadn't mentioned it. Hadn't asked. Hadn't even moved it. It sat on the hallway table. Right next to his car keys. Right where he could see it every day. He left it there like he thought I'd forget. In the bottom drawer of my desk, I found the list. Printed last year. 20th anniversary dinner. Guest names, save the date. I'd picked out the venue. He picked the menu. We never picked the guest list together. I looked at each name. Each one now ghosting me. I held the page like it used to matter. Then slowly, one line at a time, I began tearing it. Down the middle, across the sides. Until it was nothing but soft, torn pieces. I threw them in the trash. Closed the drawer. Sometimes, letting go isn't a breakdown. It's just a decision. By the end of the second week, I knew he wasn't going to sign. He walked past the envelope so many times it became part of the furniture. Like the silence, like me. So I stopped waiting. I came in early to the clinic on Thursday. Told the front desk I had to run calibration. Instead, I unlocked my personal folder, typed in his case ID, opened the record I had printed before but never used. Asked paternity report confirmed. Alleged father, Keith Reynolds. Probability 99.98% Oz. I printed 3 copies, checked the alignment, initialed the back corners. Then I sat, breathed, let the low hum of the printer settle me. That evening, I went home and searched military, honor, board violation reporting. It brought up too many links, so I narrowed it down. Veterans Affairs Conduct Review, Code 9B Misrepresentation, Moral Breach. There was a phone number. I stared at it. Then dialed. The woman on the other end sounded young. Bored. Efficient. This is intake. What's the nature of your concern? I have documentation, I said, that a decorated Marine has violated marital conduct in a way that may disqualify benefits. She paused. Are you the spouse? Yes. Name. I hesitated, then said, I just want to know the process. Another pause. Then her voice changed. Softer. "You don't have to give me anything today," she said. "But if you do decide, the documents should include timeline, proof of identity, and copies of whatever substantiates the claim." "Thank you, Mom," she added. "If you do send it registered. We don't lose those." I hung up. Didn't cry. Didn't tremble. Just printed two more things. 1. The date and time of Keith's visit to my clinic. 2. A log of our separation timeline, including the start of his guest bedroom stay and the paternity test. I signed the bottom. Not as wife. As witness. Then I folded everything and slipped it into a brown envelope. No name on the front. Not yet. But soon. Because silence isn't always peace. Sometimes, it's preparation. The envelope stayed on the kitchen counter for 4 days. I didn't hide it. Didn't tuck it away in a drawer or under a pile of mail. I left it out, right between the fruit bowl and the salt shaker. Every morning, I watched Keith walk past it. Sometimes he glanced at it. Once, he even reached for it, but never opened it. Never asked. I don't know what I was waiting for. Maybe decency. Maybe cowardice in a different costume. But it didn't come. He kept going to work. Kept drinking from the same mug. Kept acting like I hadn't found what I found. Like truth was something he could outlast. I thought about sending it every night. Address filled out. Return label blank. All I had to do was drop it in the box down the street. But something in me held back. Not out of love. Not anymore. But out of the strange space between Justice Lee and dignity. I wanted him to choose what was right before I had to force it. But I also knew he wouldn't. And the knowing was heavier than the betrayal itself. On Sunday, I made coffee just for me. Opened the window, let air in. The envelope sat there untouched. I placed my hand on top of it, light, no pressure, then pulled it back. Some truths don't need shouting. But they do deserve to be heard. I didn't send it that day. But I didn't move it either. Because silence isn't surrender, it's a countdown. If it were you, if you held the truth in your hands, would you let it go quietly? Or send it into the light? Tell me, if you had proof, would you expose them? The day I stopped waiting was the day I started packing. Not boxes, not yet, but pieces, bank accounts, passwords, copies of my birth certificate and our marriage license. I opened a new savings account in my name only. Transferred what little we hadn't shared. Not to hide, to protect. Because peace after betrayal is something you have to prepare for like a storm. Keith didn't ask, didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to. Either way, his silence gave me permission. That afternoon, I called the owner of my old clinic. The one I'd worked at before this job. A small place. 2 rooms, 1 receptionist, a blinking sign that never quite lit up right. I left 3 years ago when they downsized. No hard feelings. I told her I was considering buying in if she was thinking about retiring. She laughed. Said she was. Said she'd been waiting for a sign to let it go. I told her I might be that sign. She said, "You always had better instincts than most of us." I hung up with a strange feeling in my chest. Not relief, but possibility. Back at the lab, I cleared my personal drawer. Took home the cardigan I always forgot. The mug no one else touched. Then I opened the staff bulletin board. Took down the shift calendar I'd typed out myself just a week earlier. Ripped it in half. There was something satisfying about the sound of paper tearing. Not destruction. Declaration. I sat alone in the break room, with the sun hitting the back of my neck. It was quiet, but not empty. I wasn't running. I wasn't punishing. I was reclaiming. Everything I had poured into someone else's future. I was ready to finally offer to mine. I opened a blank Word document and stared at the blinking cursor, then typed ours to whom it may concern. At the beginning of a letter I thought I'd never write. I kept it simple, no bitterness. No drama. Just facts. Datum line of separation. Clinic visit logs. DNA report. Keith's military status. Code 9B violation. Attached every page. Labeled every file. Cross-checked it like I do for any lab submission. Not because I wanted revenge, but because truth deserved documentation. When I finished, I sat back and read it twice. It wasn't angry. It was clean. Measured. Like a quiet woman, finally using her full voice in print. I didn't hit send. Not yet. I saved it. Named the file the cess if needed. Next, I drafted my resignation. 2 paragraphs. Thanked the director. Praised the staff. Mentioned. Personal realignment. No details. No gossip. Just a line in the sand drawn politely. I didn't print it. But I left it open on my desktop. Sometimes, freedom begins as a tab you don't close. That evening, I gathered the documents. Slid them into a new envelope. This one gray. Unmarked. Then I added one more page. Not typed. Not official. Just a torn piece of notebook paper with 9 words, written in blue ink. Yes, I gave you time. You chose silence. This is mine. And I folded it once. Tucked it on top. Not for the board. Not for legal weight. Just for him. If he ever opened it. If he ever cared enough to read. Then I sealed the envelope. Not with anger. But with something that felt dangerously close to closure, and I placed it in the middle of the kitchen table. No name, no date, no address. Just waiting. Like I had. But not for much longer. He asked to talk on a Thursday night. The kitchen light was off. He stood near the sink, one hand on the counter, the other rubbing the back of his neck. Same posture he used after every mistake he didn't want to name. We should talk, he said. I didn't answer. Just waited. He shifted, cleared his throat. I've been under a lot of pressure lately. The gym. Haley. Everything moved too fast. I raised an eyebrow. He kept going. I didn't plan for any of this. You and I, we were already drifting. He said the word like it was neutral. Like betrayal was just a tide he accidentally got caught in. I crossed my arms, waited. I didn't want to hurt anyone. He finished. That line. Always that line. Like hurt was a thing that simply happened, not something he chose. I looked at him. Carefully. You had time, I said. Then paused. Let the silence fall between us like a curtain. You used it. That was all. I turned. Left him standing there in the dark. He didn't follow. Didn't call after me. The door to the guest room clicked shut. 15 minutes later, I sat alone in the living room. Hands in my lap. Heartbeat steady. Then I stood. Walked to the kitchen. Picked up the gray envelope. Opened the drawer. Pulled out the original DNA result. Placed it on top. No more, if needed. This was happening. The streets were quiet. Night wind cool against my neck. I walked with slow, even steps to the corner mailbox. The kind with a blue flap and worn-out stickers. The streetlight buzzed above me, soft, yellow, unbothered. I opened the lid, slid the envelope in, paused, let my fingers linger on the edge, then released. It dropped. Quick. Clean. I didn't cry. Didn't look back. Just closed the mailbox. And for the first time in years, I didn't wait for anyone to choose me. I chose myself. He came home at 8:37. Not late, not early. But this time he didn't drop his keys in the tray, didn't open the fridge, didn't say hi. He stood in the doorway. Still. Breathing heavier than usual. I was already on the couch. Book in hand. Lamp on low. I didn't look up right away. I didn't need to. I got a letter, he said. His voice was tighter than usual. The kind of tight that comes from panic. I closed the book. Set it on the table. From who? I asked. He laughed, dry, unfunny. You know who? I waited. He stepped further into the room. Not angry, just unraveling. They're reviewing my record, he said. Holding my benefits. Pending character review. He didn't sit down. He paced. Hands in fists at his sides. You submitted it, he said. Not a question. I nodded once. He stared at me. Like he was trying to read someone he no longer recognized. You really want to destroy me like this? That word. Destroy. Like I hadn't spent years building the man he was trying to protect. I didn't destroy anything, I said. My voice was quiet, unmoved. You just stopped hiding it. He blinked. Hard. You could have come to me. I did. When? I looked him in the eye. Felt nothing but clarity. Every night you walked past the envelope. He didn't respond. He sat down on the edge of the couch. Shoulders slumped, hands clasped together like a man begging a god he never truly believed in. "I'll lose everything," he whispered. I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured myself water, drank it slow, let the silence settle like dust between us. Then I said, "No. You already did. This is just the moment you noticed." "I'm not the villain here," he said. His voice was quiet now. Less defense. More desperation. "You know me, Lena. You know I'm not." He paused. Looked for a word he thought I might give him. But I didn't. He ran a hand through his hair, fidgeted with the cuff of his sleeve. "I made mistakes, but you and we were never perfect." I nodded. Slow. Measured. "No one said we had to be." He looked relieved. "Too quickly." But I wasn't finished. "The problem wasn't imperfection?" I said. "It was what you did with it." He tilted his head, confused, still hoping to shift the weight. "You left," I continued. "Long before I did. You just didn't pack a bag." He looked away. "You slept in another room. Started conversations you never finished. Talked about our future like I wasn't in it." He opened his mouth, closed it. "You had 100 chances to choose me," I said. "You didn't." The room went still. He stared at the floor, like it might offer him a better version of himself than I ever got to meet. "You wanted me to say something," he asked, soft, almost pleading. I shrugged. "No, I wanted you to see something." "And if I do now?" "Then you're late." I picked up my glass, walked to the sink, rinsed it out like it was any other evening. He sat there, silent, smaller somehow, like the truth they had made him shrink. I didn't hate him. Not anymore. But I didn't believe him either. And that was worse. I walked past him, up the stairs, each step lighter than I expected. At the top, I paused, turned off the hallway light, then closed my bedroom door, soft, final, locked it, not out of fear, just out of habit, the kind you form when you've finally stopped leaving yourself unprotected. He was gone before sunrise. The house was quiet in that way it gets when something permanent has left. No cabinet doors. No shoes by the door. No half-drunk coffee mug on the counter, just space. And stillness. I walked into the kitchen and saw it. A small, square object in the center of the table. His ring. The same one I placed on his finger 18 years ago. Back when he smiled without hesitation. Back when I believed forever was something you could speak into being. Now, it was just metal. Cool. Weightless. I didn't touch it. Didn't move it. I folded the tablecloth beneath it. Washed my hands. Opened the windows. Let in the morning. The call came just after noon. Block number. Neutral tone. "This is a courtesy follow-up regarding the conduct report you submitted." I said yes. Confirmed my name. The voice continued. "We've reviewed the documentation. An inquiry has been initiated. You'll be notified when it concludes." That was it. No comfort. No validation. Just process. I thanked her. Hung up. Stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. I didn't feel proud. Didn't feel like I'd won anything. Justice, when quiet, doesn't come with applause. It arrives like dust settling, soft, slow, inevitable. And still, I breathed deeper. Like I'd finally stepped out of something that had been crushing me, without ever making a sound. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing the laundry, vacuuming the stairs, answering emails about the clinic transition. Nothing dramatic, just life, moving forward like it was waiting for me to catch up. That evening, I lit a candle in the kitchen. Lavender, same one I never used when he was around because he said it gave him headaches. I stood by the sink, watching the flame flicker, hands dry, heart quiet. The house wasn't full. But it wasn't empty either. It finally belonged to me. A year later, the walls are soft green. The sign above the door reads, "Second Thread Lab." I painted it myself. Not because I couldn't afford a professional, but because I needed to. Each brushstroke felt like a sentence I'd never said out loud. I kept the place small. Just me, a part-time receptionist, and one exam room. Enough to be steady, quiet, honest. The kind of space I once needed, but couldn't find. We don't advertise much. Referrals mostly. Women who don't want to explain why they're here. Women like me. I don't ask them to. Just a clipboard. A pen. And silence they don't have to fill. Last Thursday, a girl came in. Couldn't have been more than 23. Eyes puffy from not sleeping. Clothes layered like armor. She whispered, kept her hands in her hoodie. Said, "I just want to know the truth." That's all. I nodded. Didn't press. Didn't promise anything except accuracy. She left the sample. Left quickly. Didn't look back. The result came 2 days later. Clear. Undeniable. I printed it. Folded it once. Slid it into an envelope with my initials on the seal. When she came back, she didn't sit down. Just took it with both hands. Held it like it was something more than paper. She opened it slowly. Eyes scanned line by line. Her shoulders dropped. One breath. Sharp, then soft. She looked up at me. Didn't speak. She didn't have to. I saw it in her face. What I once felt in mine. Not rage. Not revenge. Just recognition. After she left, I closed the office early. Made tea. Sat at my desk and opened a blank page. Typed as "You're invited." A small gathering. Nothing flashy. Just a quiet thank you to the people who helped me begin again. I wrote the list carefully. Less than 10 names. None of them shared blood, but every one of them helped stitch me back together. Outside, the sun was setting slow. Soft orange. Barely any wind. I stood at the window, watched the lights across the street blink on, one by one. The world didn't stop when my life unraveled, but it waited, just long enough for me to find the thread and start again. The letter came in early spring. No return address, just my name, written in a soft, unsure hand on a cream envelope. Inside, one page. Lined paper, folded once. "Hi Lena, I don't know what to say, so I won't say much. Just, thank you. If you hadn't handled things the way you did, I would have lost everything. Even the child. I thought you'd want me ruined. But you didn't. That stayed with me. I hope you're doing better. I think of you often." There were no apologies. No explanations. Just a moment of recognition I never expected to receive. I read it once, then again, slower. There was no anger in me anymore. Just quiet acceptance. Some people heal by undoing, others by understanding. I didn't write back. Didn't need to. I folded the letter carefully. Placed it in the small wooden box at the bottom of my closet. The one I keep for things I've survived. Later that week, I opened my journal. The one I only write in when something real needs naming. At the top of the page, I wrote to Thor's justice doesn't always need noise. Sometimes it just needs light. I sat back, let the stillness of the room hold me. No ache, no weight. Just space. These days, my life is not loud. It doesn't need to be. I wake early. Walk to work. Help women find answers and sometimes a little more than that. I go home to peace. Cook for one. Plant herbs on the windowsill. It's not grand. It's not perfect. But it's mine. And I've learned that sometimes that's the only kind of justice that really matters. If you've been through betrayal, quiet or loud, seen or unseen, tell me how you found your way back. How you built something from what they tried to erase. Tell me how you found your light. I'm listening.